Okay, let's continue.
Dave,
So I want to first kind of introduce myself and clarify my position. I'm not here right now as a official representative of Smart Audio. However, of course, all of us here, we are great friends and we've known each other for years. I'm more of a representative today as a blogger, and I'd like to talk with you in that capacity.
Sure.
In usual normal life, I'm an architect. So, for our Russian-speaking audience, I will be speaking in Russian, unfortunately, and of course be using a translator for our English-speaking friends that are listening.
Yep. Sure.
My website, stereo.ru,
Okay.
and we've prepared several questions for you.
Okay. Please fire away.
Yes, of course.
The guys are interested in hearing about the Reel To Reel Rambler, particularly the articles. The first question is this. In the world right now, we have two new
Absolutely new
tape decks.
Yep.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Balfinger и новый французский проект. Аналог аудио дизайн.
These, of course, as everyone knows, are quite expensive products and equipment. And at the same time, the decks, which are semi-professional from the 80s and 90s, are a lot cheaper.
Sure.
Do you believe in the near and coming future, given all of these new revival of analog sound and the potential client base, do you believe we're going to see any new projects that are more available to the mass audience, meaning a lower price and more reasonable?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think. I mean, we've got the Bullfinger, obviously, which you say is. I mean, in the UK or in Europe, it's around £10,000, £12,000 starting price, up to 25 maybe for depending on whether you want just playback or full recording, and then there's the Metaxas, which is a very bespoke machine, and its whole manufacture dictates it's going to be a pricey piece. You know, it's almost like a piece of art. I think I don't actually believe that. I don't actually agree that they are expensive. I think if you think about what you had in your main auditioning room, if you look at the engineering, say in a Bullfinger, for call it £20,000 if you go for the recording version. You know, your phono stage, for instance, in there, the I/O, that would cost more than that Bullfinger. I know this. I've got a. I'll just turn you round very briefly. That's my Aesthetics I/O phono stage. You know, this is you know, clear audio turntables. They're not. They are. You know, the lovers of really, really good sound will pay money for engineering that delivers that. And if you look at the engineering in a reel-to-reel recorder, there's so much more than there is in an amplifier. For instance, you know, your Pass Labs amplifiers will cost more than a Bullfinger. You know, your phono stage costs more than a Bullfinger. So I don't actually agree that these are expensive. So how cheap can they get? I think I know I was talking to some people a few years ago, and they were hoping to put a machine out for about €5,000, and I genuinely don't know if that's possible. There's so much more in a reel-to-reel machine than a turntable. There's so much more in a reel-to-reel machine in terms of engineering. It's similar to 2 or 3 turntables in terms of the motors and all of the transport. And 2 or 3 amplifiers. You've got your replay amplifiers, you've got your record amplifiers. It's a very, very complex piece of equipment, and therefore to make one for £5,000 or €5,000, $5,000, I don't think that will happen. Not soon, and I don't think that will happen. I think £10,000 or thereabouts is a reasonable starting point for what you're getting, and it's not overpriced. And then if you look at the cost of the tapes, because a blank reel of tape is €50, something like that, for a 10.5-inch reel. So each album is going to cost a minimum of, even if it was really done cheaply, a minimum of £200, €200, say, absolute cheapest, if it was done very, very minimally. And that's expensive compared with a CD or a download or even an LP. So I don't think that the buyers who are getting into tape, they're looking for. There are plenty of people out there who think that everything should be cheap and like, oh, the ball finger costs £20,000. That's ridiculous. I can buy a Revox for £200. Yeah, I could buy an old Porsche for £2,000 that needed £10,000 spending on it to make it work again, and a new Porsche costs £100,000. It's not the same thing. When that Revox was on the market back in 1980, it would have been an equivalent amount of money to what these machines are being charged now. Do you see what I mean there?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
The next question is connected with the type of music that's being recorded now on players. You can basically define them into 2 very different categories. Archive recordings and ultra-analog tape. Okay. We don't see in any of this classic rock. We don't see any progressive musicians like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, different legendary groups from the 70s.
Yeah.
Do you think labeling can change this relationship to this problem in this situation? Is it really possible? I mean, will we see Dark Side of the Moon on an official copy?
On an official copy.
Yes, I know what you mean. It's the next question from me to you.
Yeah, okay. Going back to your question.
Yeah, okay. Let's go.
I think I have actually been in conversation with some record company executives and producers about on this very subject, and I would love it to happen. But I think it really depends on who owns the rights to the music at this time. Now, if we were talking Pink Floyd, how much money would they want to release what is effectively their crown jewels? If they were to sell, legally and legitimately, if there was if they were going to release a 1-to-1 copy of Master of Dark Side of the Moon, they're going to want an awful lot of money for that, because it is still a priceless commercial commodity. They can put out reissues on vinyl, reissues on CD, reissues on SACD. It's not impossible, but I think the amount of money that would be needed to persuade them to do that would be prohibitive. But I think if you consider Pink Floyd, for instance, using an example, they released these immersion box sets titles, and they are, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were £200 or £300 for each of those copies, and so I think if they were ever going to make an official 15 IPS version of Dark Side of the Moon available, I would expect them to charge several £1,000s per copy, and it would be very limited. And I can't see it ever happening any other way than that. But I do believe I saw somewhere, I can't remember exactly, but I do believe that they may possibly have made available a reproduction of just the box of Dark Side of the Moon master tape or something somewhere, and it was still hundreds of pounds. And that's not for a tape, it's not for a recording, it's just for a copy of a box.
A copy of the box.
So if a copy of the box is going to cost you,
it's a new joke from Abbey Road Studio.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I've spoken to a few artists of big artists of the 80s, for instance, who maybe they signed a 25-year deal with their record company, and that's now expired. So they now own the rights to their music again. But what can they do with that? The market is awash with CDs. So is there any point in releasing a CD, which would take great investment to produce a batch of, I don't know what it would be, the minimum 1,000 CDs, 10,000 CDs. It's a lot of investment. Some of them actually are releasing a new vinyl version of their music, but I think that they could maybe maybe for just £2,000 or £3,000 a copy release those albums on tape, and there would be these are big names of that era, and maybe I think there would be a market for that. So I think it is possible that we'll see some bigger names, but they won't be at the same prices that we're paying for $300 or $400, $500 for a tape of a slightly more, a less mainstream artist.
Okay, thank you.
What I think is a very interesting question. We all very well understand that if someone wants to make tape recordings, you're not going to find anything better than Studer, Telefonke, or Ampex. Dave, what would you personally recommend for a young guy who wants to buy his first tape machine? What is your personal recommendation? What's the best place to start?
I think I would. Assuming we're talking 15 IPS 2-track.
Yes, of course.
15. Yep. 15 IPS 2-track. My first machine was a Technics RS 1500, but they are becoming quite pricey now. In the UK, you'd probably pay £2,000 minimum for one that's properly working. So I would say a Revox B77 maybe you could get for. You can buy something that needs a lot of work on it. That's not really relevant. But to get something that works, that's been serviced, I would suggest a Revox B77 as probably the best starting point. PR99 is kind of just the same thing but slightly newer. And you could buy that for maybe £1,000, and yeah.
Okay, and the next step.
The next question, which is directly connected to the first question I asked you. There are several technical companies that work in the sphere of renovation of tape machines. In Russia, we are very well acquainted with Urs Steiner.
I've heard of this guy. Yeah.
Revox Online.
And Revox Online.
Okay. Yeah.
So there actually has appeared in Germany an official renovation factory, Ursteiner of Revox.
Okay.
Do you have any personal recommendations of any firms or individuals that are experienced and do a quality job of renovating Revox or any tape machines? Yeah, I'm asking for your personal recommendation if you have.
Absolutely. That's on the Reel To Reel Rambler. I only list a very small number of service engineers, and the reason for that is I'm only going to recommend someone I've tried myself and have personal experience from. And in the UK, well, in fact, the first guy I came across was a chap called Dave Corley, who I bought my techniques from. But he has now basically retired from that side of the business, from restoring RS 1500s. So, I could recommend him, but he won't thank me because he doesn't want the work. But there are two other guys that I've subsequently used, and Dave really did only specialise in the tech. Well, he specialised in techniques. So the first guy I used in the UK is a guy called Rod Thea. His company is Thea Technology, and he's been in business since the heyday of tape. And he restored my Studer A807 back to factory specification and did a fantastic job. And these guys aren't cheap, but then again, they are very specialist. And if you had a Ferrari, you wouldn't take it to the guy down the road who's to get it. So you have something quality like that, you get it serviced by the guy who really is qualified to do it. So Rod Thea was the first guy I tried, and then subsequently I came to meet this guy called Petronel Butok of the Audiophiles Clinic, and he fully restored my Studer A812 and has maintained all my machines since that time. And he'll work on anything, but he's also I think he's the UK official service engineer for Nakamichi cassette decks as well. So he will do all sorts of work in analog audio electronics. And both Petronel and Rod Thea, they both primarily, probably the biggest part of their income is actually servicing machines for studios. And again, it's if you've got a studio machine, then you really want it serviced by someone who knows that very well. And there are plenty of other tape service engineers, if you like, in the UK that I'm aware of, and quite a few who've got in touch with me since I launched the Reel To Reel Rambler, saying, "Can you list me on?" And I said, "Well, I can't recommend you when I haven't seen what you do or tried your work. It's not to say that they aren't good, but I can only recommend what I have personal experience of. Or if I had a friend who had a machine and he said, "Oh, this guy served this for me," and I could see that was a good job, that would be different. But so really, at the moment, there's those two guys. There's also a third guy, Joe Fialo, I know through my day job, which is working in the hi-fi industry, and Joe is the official UK service engineer for TIAC and Tascam. So if you've got a TIAC and Tascam machine in the UK, he's your man to take it to.
Thank you very much.
The last question that I want to ask you is specifically geared toward those who are very focused and interested in the realm of tape players.
Okay.
You're looking at a lot of, you've got young people who are looking on the internet for, something to start with, and you have international project for 350 to 450 euros. Then you have for 700.
Yeah, $700 for two open reels.
For two open reels, yeah.
Singer.
Lynn Stanley, yeah. Lynn Stanley. Good price.
Yeah. But
and then this, let's say this young person opens another door of the internet. It's called eBay or Amazon, and sees a lot of master copies.
You know what I mean.
And you understand, yeah.
И он начинает покупать Deep Purple за $200.
And he starts buying Deep Purple albums for, $200.
Не буду перечислять, ты знаешь, что там находится.
You understand exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go on and on, but...
Но там бывают случаи в этом интернете,
There are
Когда
cases.
можно купить the Free Blind Minds with Tsuyoshi Yamamoto.
Yeah, Yamamoto, Mitsuyoshi Yamamoto.
Official copy of Japanese tapes.
And it was really a really terrible copy of yeah. It was sold in an auction format. Yeah, how do we, you know, I mean, is there a technique, is there a way to really tell the fake from the real product? Fake from, yeah.
Well,
it's a hard question, I know.
Yeah. Very hard question. I mean, the thing is, as you rightly say, there are reputable labels. If we're talking reissues of classic material, you've got the original one was the Tape Project, or that's one of the original ones, and they have a small but good catalogue of recordings, and I know that they actually arrange.
Yeah, just 4 demons, and that's all.
They're great recordings. I've got a dozen or so Tape Project tapes, and they sound fantastic, and you know, they cost $450 or $500, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got Analog Productions, Chad Kasim's new business, which is doing a very similar thing at the same price, and I've bought 5 of those so far, and they're great, absolutely great. And frankly, I think they are cheap for what they are. You think that they're $450. There's 2 reels of tape in there. That's maybe, you know, with the metal reels and the boxes, that's maybe $150 worth of raw material.
Yeah, it's not a big profit for them.
It's not a big profit at all. No, not at all. Not at all. And there are some others. There's some smaller labels that will do this. I was talking to a chap from Reel To Reel Tapes Russia. I don't know if you know them.
Yes, I know.
They've got a small catalogue of Melodia reissues, which I believe are purely authentic, you know, licensed. So there's these reputable companies, but then there are other companies that appear to be reputable. Yeah. And in fact, I know for a fact that some of their recordings don't have copyright. You know, they didn't pay for the license to do that. So even then, even amongst the ones that appear to be legitimate, there is a question mark. I recently was chatting to Volker Langer from Hort's House, and they again like Tape Project. I believe that they have, you know, correctly negotiated deals. He was telling me of some deals he's done to gain extra rights and explaining some of his new releases. So there are these companies that do that, and then you've got the other smaller labels like yourself who make your own recordings. So you clearly have your copyright of your own recording. That's fine, and these are legitimate. And then you've got what you see on eBay, the master copies, and it's so difficult to say, because one of the first thing to say about this is, whatever you're buying from this seller on eBay, it is not an authorized, licensed copy. Buying a pirate copy, and there is absolutely no, apart from the fact that the artist won't get any license fees, he won't get any royalties. Apart from that, there is absolutely no control over the quality whatsoever. Even if the seller had the original master, you know, had a Dark Side of the Moon safety master which he had somehow acquired, you know, he might have copied it from, you know, one badly set up Revox to a badly set up Sony, and it sounds awful. It's still a pirate copy. Or he might have taken it to a studio and made a really, really good copy. You just don't know. You absolutely don't know. And there's no way of there's no real way of telling. And ultimately you're buying a pirate unlicensed thing, you know.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your answers.
Yeah. Okay.